Big contracts can redefine an NBA player's career.
Some exciting news. The Philadelphia 76ers have also signed 9-time All-Star Paul George to a 4-year deal on a max contract.
But not always for the better. With higher salaries come greater expectations, relentless scrutiny, and the weight of proving every dollar was worth it. Some players rise to the occasion, others fade under the pressure. When you get paid, then fall off. How does it all go wrong? Paul George once had a reputation as one of the league's premier two-way players. He combined length, athleticism, and scoring touch to dominate on both ends of the floor. Then came a massive contract that put him in the top tier of NBA earners. Expectations soared. The fan base and media alike believed he could anchor a championship run. Initially, he delivered glimpses of greatness, dropping big scoring numbers and showcasing defensive prowess. But gradually, questions emerged regarding consistency, late-game impacts, and overall drive. Soon after signing his lucrative deal, George's shooting efficiency fluctuated. He went from hitting clutch shots to struggling through rough stretches. Critics pointed to his evolving role, as well as nagging injuries that seemed to hamper his explosiveness. There were nights he showed flashes of superstar brilliance, drilling key buckets and locking down opponents. Yet, on other occasions, he appeared disconnected, settling for contested jumpers, or deferring too much in critical moments.
He doesn't look like a dude that wants to play. I hope that I'm wrong. He's class personified, one of the best people you'll ever meet in professional sports, but he looks really, really bad.
His off-court ventures also drew scrutiny. While diversifying interests is common for many players, George's podcasting commitments became a hot topic among fans. They questioned whether these side pursuits distracted him from refining his craft. Whenever he had a subpar game, social media would light up, blaming a perceived lack of focus. The relentless attention created tension, and analysts noted that mental strains might explain his inconsistent output. Once branded the heir to elite wing play, George endured frequent criticisms about leadership. Supporters wondered if he could truly guide a team, or if he functioned best as a second option. The big paycheck put him under a microscope, where every missed shot and defensive lapse fed the narrative that he wasn't living up to the contract's lofty expectations. Duncan Robinson's story began with him as a late bloomer who rose from obscure college ranks to NBA stardom. His accurate three-point shooting became essential to his team's success, culminating in a deep postseason run that vaulted him into the national spotlight. Opposing defenses struggled to track him around screens, and fans celebrated his rapid-fire release and unshakable confidence. This upward trend caught the attention of the front office, leading to a contract that would reward his uncanny sharpshooting. Once the ink dried on his lucrative deal, expectations soared. A specialist in hitting from beyond the arc, Robinson faced new defensive tactics designed to chase him off the three-point line. Opponents closed out faster, nudging him away from favored spots. Without reliable secondary skills, like strong on-ball creation or mid-range play, he found it tougher to adapt. Meanwhile, coaches experimented with different lineups, trying to hide his defensive limitations. While his shot remained a weapon, the constant targeting of him on defense began to limit his minutes. As the season progressed, Robinson encountered scoring droughts that challenged his confidence. Previously, a brief shooting slump would be followed by an explosive performance, but the league's adjustments, combined with a more critical fan base, prolonged these cold spells. Pressures grew, and whispers about whether he could justify his contract turned louder. Observers noted that his defensive struggles overshadowed the occasional hot shooting night. Injury to his shooting hand was also factored into the equation. Even minor setbacks for a volume shooter can disrupt rhythm, and any hitch in his release became magnified. The training staff worked to keep him game ready, but the mental toll of playing through pain arguably contributed to more uneven showings. Eventually, Robinson found himself receiving sporadic playing time, replaced by teammates who offered solid defense and passable offense. His coaches had no choice but to prioritize overall versatility. Despite moments when the net seemed as wide as an ocean, he couldn't consistently deliver the spark they had banked on. A contract initially viewed as a deserved reward turned into a constant reminder that the NBA is unforgiving to one-dimensional contributors once teams figure out their game. Big Ben Wallace built a legacy on intimidating defense and relentless effort. His commanding presence in the paint helped lead a famous Detroit Pistons squad to a championship. Fans admired how he thrived without a polished offensive game, racking up rebounds, blocks, and steals while anchoring an entire defensive system. That reputation earned him accolades, including Defensive Player of the Year honors and ultimately a sizable payday elsewhere. After a disappointing end to the Pistons' title chase, Wallace sought a fresh start with a rival team. He signed signed a substantial contract that aimed to import his shot-blocking heroics and leadership. On paper, the move promised to transform his new squad into a contender. Early returns showed glimpses of success, with the defense gaining a boost. However, cracks soon formed when he was tasked with more offensive responsibility, an area historically uncharted for him. Age also emerged as a silent opponent. The athletic burst that once allowed him to out-jump taller centers for boards began to wane. Subtle declines in lateral movement meant players driving the lane could exploit gaps where previously there were none. Opposing teams used pick and rolls to pull Wallace away from the rim, reducing the impact of his interior presence. His production dipped drastically, especially on offense. A center who rarely scored now needed to at least finish at the rim efficiently, but that aspect of his game never developed. That shortcoming was only magnified once he was making more money and facing larger expectations. Meanwhile, fans who once cheered his hustle were dismayed at the apparent mismatch between his contract and actual output. Coaches tried various schemes to maximize his defensive strengths while hiding his offensive flaws. Over time, though, injuries and father time chipped away at the robust skills that made him special. The once dependable anchor found himself unable to handle the physical and strategic demands. The contract that brought him in as a savior gradually looked like a burden. His story remains a caution about paying top-tier dollars to a specialist, regardless of how transformative that player once seemed on a championship roster. Gilbert Arenas soared to stardom through his fearless scoring and vibrant personality. He became a fixture on highlight reels for his deep shooting range, clutch moments, and iconic celebrations. The Washington Wizards relied on his point production and leadership, making him the focal point of their offense. From dropping 50-point games to upsetting higher-seeded teams, Arenas showcased how a dynamic guard could carry a franchise. That success secured him a contract reflecting both his prior achievements and the expectation he'd keep delivering heroic performances. Soon after, injury struck. A severe knee issue sidelined him, and rumors swirled that recovery was taking longer than it should. Without his trademark explosiveness, the high-volume scoring seemed unsustainable. While fans held on to hope, each re-aggravation of the injury signaled that Arenas might never again be the unstoppable force who demanded defensive double teams at half-court. The front office, committed to his massive deal, found itself in a difficult spot, forced to retool the roster around a star struggling to stay healthy. Off-court drama compounded the problem. Tensions flared when reports emerged of Arenas bringing a firearm into the locker room, resulting in one of the more infamous suspensions in NBA history. Public perception shifted from seeing him as an entertaining showman to a problematic figure overshadowing the team's progress. Media scrutiny ballooned, while coaches tried to salvage the season despite missing their biggest star for large stretches. By the time he returned, the Wizards had moved on, preferring to invest in a future that didn't hinge on his fragile knees. Though he occasionally flashed brilliance, consistency eluded him. His once feared jumper lacked the same lift, and defenders who once struggled to contain him found it easier to challenge his compromised athleticism. Trades and short stints on other rosters followed, but the shine had disappeared. Fans still recall Arenas for the excitement he brought in his prime. Few players could score in bursts like he could, yet the contract he signed became a heavy anchor as he struggled with injuries and controversies. The promise of a franchise guard carrying a team to playoff glory ended in frustration, illustrating how quickly fortunes can change once a big check is secured but health fails. Joakim Noah earned respect across the league for his fiery spirit and defensive prowess. In Chicago, he guarded the paint, dished sharp passes from the high post, and played an integral role during the Bulls' playoff runs. His unorthodox shooting form never mattered because hustle and leadership took precedence. As injuries mounted, though, his explosiveness waned. Despite this, a new opportunity in New York arrived, accompanied by a hefty contract that promised a revival of earlier glory. Almost from the start, the fit looked awkward. Noah's body, battered by years of high-intensity play, struggled to match the speed of faster, more agile bigs. Offensively, he contributed little beyond rebounding and occasional putbacks. Coaches hoped to utilize his passing acumen, but floor spacing issues surfaced. Opponents clogged the lane when he was on the court, daring others to shoot from distance while he roamed without the dynamic energy that once made him an all-star. Compounding these problems were off-court complications. Noah faced suspension for violating the league's anti-drug policy, tarnishing his standing with the organization. By the time he returned, his minutes plummeted. Disagreements with the coaching staff erupted into public feuds, turning a once highly touted signing into a toxic storyline for fans. With each passing month, the massive salary and minimal output became more apparent. Eventually, the front office cut ties, absorbing significant financial losses. The contract's backloaded nature meant the team was effectively paying for a fraction of the production they expected. Noah's role on the roster ended in an awkward separation where neither side benefited. Fans, hoping for a championship-caliber tandem, felt let down by underwhelming performances and never-ending drama. Chandler Parsons found early success as a versatile forward who could stretch the floor and make crafty plays off the dribble. In Houston and Dallas, he gave glimpses of a modern wing with size, passing, and shooting touch. The buzz around him soared high enough that an eager franchise bestowed upon him a substantial long-term deal, convinced he'd elevate their offense. Hopes centered on him, complementing a sturdy front court and providing a potent shooting threat from the perimeter. Once the ink dried, it became clear that injuries were a serious concern. Parsons grappled with recurring knee problems that impacted his mobility, lateral quickness, and overall explosion. Frequent stints on the sideline made it tough for him to build chemistry with teammates. Even when cleared to play, he struggled to regain top form, hampered by lingering pain and diminished confidence. Fans initially stayed patient, recalling past highlights where Parsons showed playmaking and sharpshooting. But as the big money deal ate a large chunk of the salary cap, critics grew louder about his reduced role. His shooting percentages dipped, and he offered little on defense, lacking the agility to guard quicker wings or the strength to battle bigger forwards. Teams soon targeted him in picks and rolls, creating a defensive liability that coaches had to address. The rising frustration peaked when rumors swirled that the front office was searching for trade partners. Unfortunately, no team wished to absorb a contract tied to a forward whose knees appeared permanently compromised. Parsons' social media presence became a lightning rod for mockery, with fans noting that he appeared more active online than on the court. In truth, the injuries, not laziness, derailed him, but that distinction did little to quell the criticism. John Wallace built his early brand on lightning-fast drives and impressive leadership at the point guard spot. He combined agility with a knack for distributing the ball, marking him as a franchise cornerstone. His supporters envisioned an extended stretch of all-star level play. Management agreed, offering an eye-popping contract that instantly made him one of the league's highest earners. Initially, that confidence appeared justified, given Wallace's ability to orchestrate offenses and attack the basket. Shortly after the mega deal commenced, recurring injuries took their toll. Foot and leg problems slowed his trademark speed, and he spent more time rehabbing than performing. Though he occasionally displayed flashes of his former brilliance, the unstoppable drives became less frequent. Meanwhile, the team dynamic shifted around him, with younger talents emerging as central figures. Wallace struggled to adapt to a reduced role while under the shadow of a contract, which many viewed as burdensome. Fans' patience waned as he consistently missed games. Critics labeled him a financial millstone, arguing that he hampered roster flexibility. Rumors circulated about potential trades, but other organizations balked at taking on his monumental salary. Media outlets scrutinized his lifestyle and hinted that off-court decisions might factor into his lengthy absences. In press conferences, Wallace expressed frustration at not being able to showcase the form that once captivated the league. Eventually, a trade did materialize, but it involved swapping one hefty contract for another, underscoring how his value had shifted from a prize star to an albatross. The new environment offered him a chance to reboot his career, yet persistent health setbacks followed. Each setback led fans to question if they would ever see the blazing speed that warranted such a massive payday. Tyreke Evans was once hailed as one of the NBA's brightest young stars, a dynamic guard with explosive potential and a playmaking ability that left fans in wonder. However, his once promising career quickly became an example of what happens when early brilliance meets harsh reality. While his high school and college exploits painted the picture of a future superstar, Evans's NBA journey was ultimately defined by a dramatic and painful downfall. After being selected high in the draft and lighting up the league as a rookie, Evans's trajectory began to waver as soon as the pressures of a big contract and soaring expectations set in. Initially, he dazzled with his all-around game, but the transition from being a fresh-faced prodigy to a reliable undeniable star was far from smooth. Instead of steadily evolving, his game suffered a series of setbacks that would derail the momentum he had built early in his career. Injuries became the first major obstacle on his path. Recurring knee problems and other nagging ailments disrupted his rhythm and wasted his explosiveness. These setbacks forced him off the court more often than not, stunting his development and preventing him from consistently performing at the level that had once defined his rookie campaign. Each time he returned from injury, fans and critics alike noted that he was never quite the same. His raw energy and fluidity diminished by the toll these physical issues had taken. Compounding the injury challenges was a shift in his role on the teams he played for. Evans, who had once been the central figure in orchestrating his team's offense, was often moved around and forced into roles that didn't suit his strengths. Whether playing off the ball or struggling to adapt to new positions, the lack of consistency in his usage led to inconsistent performances that never quite matched the promise of his early years. The constant adjustments and shifting expectations left him without the stability needed to refine his skills and establish himself as a cornerstone of any franchise. Off the court, the pressures and distractions of a lucrative contract and high media scrutiny added another layer of difficulty. Evans faced intense scrutiny over his commitment and work ethic, with every bad performance fueling a narrative of a player who couldn't handle the weight of his promise. This pressure ultimately culminated in a dramatic fall from grace when off-court issues, most notably a violation of the league's anti-drug policy, led to his dismissal and disqualification from the NBA. Although he was later reinstated, this incident permanently stained his reputation and marked a turning point in his career. These stories reveal how high-stakes contracts can result in massive disappointment when injuries, off-court issues, or complacency set in. NBA history is full of examples where early brilliance gave way to regret as franchises watched huge deals yield lackluster returns. Should front offices adopt new strategies, or will these risks persist as an inevitable part of the sport? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next video, shown on screen.